Hello, welcome back to the channel. Today is the much promised summer garden tour, or veg garden tour I should say. So today we're just going to walk around the veg garden, see what's growing, what's not growing, talk about some of my successes, my failures, and what I will be doing continuing throughout the summer and then into the autumn. Because I will try to continue planting right up until the first frost. That's the plan, the game plan. And then of course, I will be doing winter gardening inside the greenhouse this year as well. It's something I did last year when I had some radishes and lettuce growing in the greenhouse, which was a fun experiment. So I think I'm going to continue that this year, except I'm going to make some slight changes to it, but I'll cover that in the winter. Today, we're talking about the veg garden during the summer. Also, forgive the grass, and actually there's really no weeds there are some weeds in some of the beds, not too bad, but the grass is really overgrown, and it's simply because we've had so much rain lately and there hasn't been enough time to get in here to mow the grass when it's not sopping wet. I think we're supposed to get some more rain tonight, and then I think we're gonna have 3 days of dry weather before the next storm rolls through, which means I will be mowing the lawn over the next 3 days as everything dries out. Anywho, let's get on to, we're going to start with the in-ground beds. We'll try to sweep through them. I don't think we're going to be touching really on the potting table, but let's start with the in-ground beds. Also, I have to apologize if you guys hear any background noise, like a lawnmower running. My neighbor's mowing his lawn, and I could wait 2 to 3 hours for him to be done, but I have things to do, and so we're just going to move on, and hopefully I can edit it all out. Word, it's hard. Summer, heat. Here we go. So apparently the deer have been leaping into the veg garden here from the front fence, it looks like, because I see deer tracks. And it looks like they came in last night and nibbled on my daylilies. This is not the end of the world because the daylilies will grow back, but it is a little upsetting. Now, I am receiving a few new products to try to help keep the deer away. One of those products I've recently purchased has been a total failure. And I'm going to do a whole separate video on some of the deer products that I do use, or the deer repellent products I use. But there's a repellent right out here outside the gate. And again, the deer have hopped right over. There are things I could do if I really wanted to, but for the most part, the deer seem to have been not as destructive as they could be, but it is upsetting a little bit that they are hopping the fence. There is a herd of at least 4 that are coming through the garden every night. Now, they don't come into the veg garden every night, but they have come in here quite a few times, and it looks like last night they did come in for a little snack. Behind it, I have the Midnight Rouge sunflower, and again, it looks like they took a couple of heads off the top, which is really weird. But overall, this plant has done all right. Not as spectacular as I like it to be, but it's done okay. In this row right here, I have several different pepper plants. Some of these are doing better than others. This one right here is El Jefe Jalapeno. That one's doing pretty well. A few of these I started from seed. This one is Big Red Sweet Pepper, and it has a fruit on it, which is awesome. And this one is Asia Rico pepper. Not so good. It's growing, but no fruits yet. I'm not an expert at growing peppers. If any of you have grown peppers before and think my peppers should be a little further along, please feel free to leave those comments below. Any hints, tips, suggestions, etc. I'm always open to those. Right along the front here, I have Lavender Queen zinnias. If I'm not mistaken, they'll be a purplish color. These were planted late. They're doing quite well, and hopefully they will flower right up until the first frost. Behind it, not doing so well, growing, but not spectacularly, is Connecticut Field Pumpkin. I've got 2 vines here. Again, they aren't growing, just not flourishing as much as I would have hoped. So I don't think I'm going to get any sort of pumpkins or any pumpkins of size before the first frost. I could be wrong, but I've grown pumpkin here, and I started them in June, and by now I'd have vast vines growing, 6, 7, 8 foot long vines growing and flowering. This year though, this guy is not doing so well. It could have something to do with the soil. This was store-bought Lowe's compost, and thinking that it might have some weed killer in it. Along the back, I have my Liatris Blazing Star. That's doing quite well. It's growing quite tall. Hopefully, it looks like it's about ready to start flowering, so hopefully that starts going off really quick. Right over here, I have some Black Russian sunflowers, and again, they're doing quite well. I'm hoping that they might start flowering in the next couple of weeks, maybe. Hopefully they get a lot taller. With the rain and the heat, hopefully they get up there. Right here, I have spaghetti squash, and that's really taken off with all the rain and heat that we've had recently. Hopeful that come the fall, I have quite a few spaghetti squashes. In front of it over here, I have lemon cuke. It was a weird plant that my wife had me pick up. It's not doing so great, and the same could probably be said for this lemon squash. Slow growing, and I don't think that they should be slow growing. Call me crazy, but I think they should be faster. Along the back, I have some more Black Russian, and they've been hit multiple times by the deer, and it looks like the deer even walked through it last night, which is strange because then they leave the mammoth sunflowers that are right next to it alone. Right here, I have my rattlesnake watermelon, excuse me, and that is doing pretty well. Again, I feel like the vines should be much bigger, and it has yet to flower. So I'm hoping that in the next few weeks, maybe I get a flower or two, and then I can start growing some late season watermelon here. Behind me over here, I have the Pikes Peak sunflower, and that one is, it's doing good. Not as tall as I thought it would be, but again, it may have something weird to do with this, the soil itself. Not sure about that. Behind me over here, I have the salad and beet bed, and the deer have hit the beets a few times, but they're still growing. The salads are done. I've started pulling them. It's just getting too hot now, and a lot of them are starting to bolt. And in the front, I have my pepper pots, and I'll share that in a second. These two pots, if I'm not mistaken, were in the greenhouse, and the plan was to keep them in the greenhouse, and then they would do their things inside the greenhouse, because from my understanding is peppers really like the heat, and the greenhouse is really warm. Unfortunately, I don't think they were getting quite enough sun. So what I did was I brought them both out here, and they really weren't suffering, but they really weren't thriving. And the other issue is that I don't think they were getting consistent pollination. They were flowering, but I don't think the plants were getting enough pollination. So I moved them out here, and on the big one here, I have, looks like 1, 2, 3, at least 3 fruits. This smaller one, really nothing. It looks a little waterlogged right now. And then off to my side here, I have 2 more. Now, both these recently were nibbled on by the deer, so that set them back a bit, and I don't think I'm going to get anything from these plants as well. So what I'm going to do with the 2 smaller pots here, if they recover enough and they don't flower or they don't produce any fruit this year, is what I'll do is I'll take them, move them into the greenhouse for the winter. I did it with the big one over here last year, where I planted it up late. It didn't do anything before the fall. I just moved it into the greenhouse. It survived, and then once everything started getting warmer, it started growing more. So here it is, and we're now producing fruit. From what I've seen online and from what I understand is that peppers are perennial, so I can just keep moving them in and out of the greenhouse. The only thing I'm going to have to monitor would be the fertilization. Now during the wintertime, not going to fertilize the plants, but maybe come springtime, I would fertilize the plants. This big pot's already been fertilized a couple of times. Again, that's just because the plants are in the same soil for a prolonged period of time, and they just suck up all the nutrients there. Right behind these pots here, I was supposed to have some more zinnias, but I think that the deer are nibbling on the seedlings as they come up. I'm not sure. So let's look at the corn real quick. Little dog in the back of the garden bed chewing on something that she probably shouldn't be chewing on. Now the corn was I'm going to go with success this year because it grew. The raccoons didn't get to the cobs. I've already harvested quite a few cobs and I've eaten a few. So there's a few cobs here that haven't, I don't think they were pollinated because the silks have been pretty, they've been white for a while, and it looks like these flowers are done, so there's no more pollination going on. But I do have a few cobs like this one right here. I just noticed. I don't know if it's ready or not, but one of the ways they tell you if it feels ready is that the tip is rounded. This tip feels pointy. That being said, the silks are brown and done. Well, I'm going to pull it anyways. It's getting too warm and we've been too wet, so I'm afraid of the cobs getting infested with bugs and rotting, which is what happened to me in the past. So the corn being a success, next year I might do yet more corn. I'm not sure about that. And by more corn, I mean expand, instead of just doing one small row here, expand to a larger section and do the corn there. So let's move on to other stuff. Okay, so now we're towards the back of the veg garden here on the one side of the greenhouse, and my sweet potatoes are doing well. I've been trimming as per recommended, I've been trimming the vines, but unfortunately I had deer come through the other night and decided to do some trimming for me. So that was fun, but the vines they will recover. They already are putting on some new leaves, which is pretty amazing. Hopeful that nothing else bothers the sweet potatoes like ants. And in the fall, I have a bountiful harvest. So if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe, click that bell icon to be notified when I do post a new video. Because again, I may be touching on a subject that you care about, like the veg garden or the flower garden or the orchard or harvesting something, who knows? Or you just may want to see all my antics and see if the heat finally does me in by the end of the summer. Over to this bed over here, I have 2 cinnamon basil plants. I grew these from seed. They're doing quite well. I have let them go to flower simply because I never intended to eat them. I just thought the flowers were really pretty. And it also helps bring around the pollinators, which is good because hopefully in the next, I don't know, couple of weeks or so maybe, the birdhouse gourd vines here start to flower. And that will be super exciting. They're already climbing up the fence extension that I made them, which is great. Last year we just had them go along the bottom of the fence, but they seemed a little crowded. So I'm hopeful that this year, climbing up, the vines get longer and they produce more birdhouse gourds. And then I'll eventually make birdhouses out of them. And then we'll see what happens come the fall, and I'll have hopefully more news on that in the future. Anyways, also in this bed, I have several small cherry tomato plants, which are, again, they're very small. They're not really putting on a lot of growth, and they've been very small for a long time. Now, I did use what I consider a good quality raised bed mix, but again, I'm wondering, is there some sort of weed killer in the soil from wherever the soil came from that is then slowing down or hampering the growth of the plants, such as the tomatoes? Also, the Mexican sour gherkins I have, very small, growing very slowly. Don't know. Part of it also could be the lack of days of sun. We've had a pretty wet summer so far, and I would say there's been more cloudy days than sunny days. So that also could be hampering some of these plants that really enjoy the sunlight. Not sure. In these 2 beds here, this bed, there's really nothing here. There was stuff here, harvested it, life is good, the bed is sunk down. I have a lot of homegrown compost that I'm going to be putting in this bed, and then I'm undecided whether I'm going to top it off with a raised bed mix or not. That I'll determine once I fill this. But this bed we're going to use to try to grow our gladiolus. If you've been following with the channel, I've been collecting a lot of gladiolus seed. My wife and I are going to try to grow in this bed, and it will take a couple of years to go from a seed to a plant to, a good sized corm that we could then sell or give away or whatever. In this bed over here, I have sugar baby watermelon, I think that's what it's called. If I'm wrong, I'll just put a thing down here. I seeded it twice, and just now the seeds are starting to produce plants, but I don't know what it's going to produce. Now, if you guys remember, I took all my potatoes that I was growing in bags and I dumped the bags into this bed. So it's a lot of potting soil, but the potting soil was also, basically devoid of nutrients because the potatoes probably absorbed all the nutrients that was in the potting soil. What I did was I added a lot of organic fertilizer to this bed to basically replace that. So theoretically, the beds should be okay so far as nutrients, but the seedlings that I have, the seeds that I planted, very few, well, now I have more coming up, but they're not growing exponentially fast as I would expect them. And again, part of that may just be because of the lack of sun, or again, it could just be a combination of lack of sun. Maybe there's not enough nutrients in the bed. I don't know. It was an experiment, trying something new, what to do with all that potting soil that I had from the bagged potatoes. Let's move on to the next beds. So now the next set of beds here. Now in this bed over here, we have my half runner beans. And I discussed that before, that I felt that I didn't see any beans on them. So I thought that, you know, I'd overplanted and, you know, just wasn't working out well. Well, needless to say, they exploded in beans. So the beans produced a lot and they taste okay. But the biggest problem I have with the two varieties of half runner beans that I grew is they're stringy. And I don't like stringy beans, but Sophie likes these. So I have been using these so they're not going to waste. I've been feeding Sophie the beans. She likes them. Their beans are good for her. So it's a win-win in a way. But I'll be clearing these beans out probably pretty soon. Looks like a lot of the plants are starting to go over. And I don't know what I'm going to do in this bed yet. Maybe spinach. I grew spinach in one of these beds last year. I think it was the one by the gate, and it worked well. So maybe I'll add new raised bed mix to this bed because it has sunken down a little bit, and then I'll do spinach in it for the fall. This bed over here, I have parsley, which I just did a little trim back on. Surprisingly, the horned worms have not entered the scene, and they have not mowed it back, which is surprising. I do intend to try to freeze and or dry out some of this, but I don't know if I'll actually get to that. Same thing with the basil, although I still think I have quite a bit of dried basil left over from almost 2 years ago. Either way, the plants are all doing well. I'm pretty happy with that. The bed in front of it, I have sage, English thyme, oregano, and rosemary. That is also doing very well. Can't say enough about it. It's grown very well. Let's look at the last remaining beds. So this is my raised bed section. Again, if you've been following along the channel, you know I have 8 beds here. This bed over here, I had my Walla Walla onions. I actually still have some in the ground. And I did a video a while back when I was worried about the onions rotting due to heavy rains. Well, the heavy rains that we were supposed to get, we didn't get, but we did get subsequent storms after that. So I started pulling some of the Walla Wallas a little early and some of them after they started flopping, because some did start flopping. And I did find a couple that did start to rot. Not the end of the world, because I had so many and they've gotten so large. So my wife and we're keeping a couple. We'll probably be giving a few away to friends, families, and loved ones, that kind of jazz. And I have a few more here in the ground, which I'll probably be harvesting very soon. Behind that, Lemon Gem Marigolds. They were fabulous performer this year. Getting a little long and they're flopping over. So I'm not sure what to do at this point. Maybe, I don't know if I can cut them back and then they'll reflush, or maybe just resow this whole bed with some flowers like marigolds or zinnias for the rest of the year. Behind me here, I have the Crouching Tiger zinnia. These just fabulous. I've been deadheading them as much as I can, but they are just beautiful, colorful, and like many zinnias, prolific. Prolific? Is that the right word? Am I using the right words here? They just keep growing. It's fabulous. Over here, I have my tomato plants. They have not been doing well. I've noticed many gardeners, sometimes they blame the plant. That's not me. If the plant's not doing well, it's my fault. It's something that I'm doing. And in this case, I feel like I planted them too close, and I put them in these restrictive cages because I was worried about them growing too large. These are indeterminates, and then they start flopping everywhere, which has happened to me in the past. So I thought if I put them in a cage, within a cage kind of thing, I could better control them, but I wound up cramping them, and it's a mess. I do have some tomatoes on here, but many of these tomatoes the bugs have gotten to. That being said, I did take I took one side shoot from one of these plants and I put it in a pot up on my back deck, and that's produced a good healthy tomato. It had some of those splits when you get too much water, but other than that, it had not been touched by the bugs. And I have another one which is basically going to do the same thing. Again, not been touched by the bugs, knock on wood. So far so good. These plants may still wind up producing some fruit which doesn't get touched by the bugs. I have been trying to do some pruning to allow airflow to try to prevent any sort of fungal diseases, but again, I planted them too close, put them in too restrictive cages, all my fault. Also in this bed is some basil and onions, more onions. The onions I have growing in this bed are candy hybrid onions. They are doing quite well, and I'll probably be harvesting them within a month or so. So once the Walla Wallas start getting used up, then I'll have the candy hybrids. And with a little luck, and if I dry them out correctly, we should have onions going right into the winter, maybe even through the winter. Again, if we keep them in a cool, dry place. That'd be pretty exciting. Okay, had to take a little break because my one neighbor was running his weed whacker there, and it was really loud. And I had to get something to drink because it's really hot out. Back here, the next two beds, I had my rattlesnake pole beans, which they're basically done. They've gone over. I am going to let a few of these hopefully dry out and collect some seeds. And then I'm going to take all these vines out and clear it out. Behind them here, I have my green finger cucumber. And that has performed exceptionally well this year. We probably got, oh God, probably 18 at least cucumbers off of it, which is awesome. And I think it's only 2 plants. In fact, I see another one. There may be 1 or 2 more before this plant is done. What I'm thinking going forward is once I get all this cleared out in the next few weeks, try to get another crop of cucumbers in before the fall. And so what I'll do is I'll clear all this out on this side and then I'll replant. Maybe I'll do like 3 plants and then again, let that grow up and do its thing. Again, I'm in growing zone 8A. Our heat, and sunny days will extend well into the fall, and I'm not expected to see our first frost until probably mid-November. Who knows? I might be able to get another good crop of cucumbers in. On this side, I am growing 2 crops that I've never grown before. One is Armenian yard-long cucumbers. So they're gonna get about 3 feet long. They almost look like a loofah. So the vines are doing quite well right now. I see a lot of flowers, which is a good thing. Sadly, a lot of leaves are missing because the deer came through here and nibbled on some of the plant as well. Not the whole plant, but just some of it, which is weird. But the plant is still growing and doing its thing, so that's pretty exciting. And hopefully the plants grow and we get at least 1 or 2. That would be nice. Worst case scenario, nothing grows this year. We still have some seeds left over, so I will try again next year to grow these Armenian yard-longs, and we'll see what happens. If they grow, and my wife likes the flavor, obviously, I'll grow them again. Back here, I have green apple cucumbers. So they're small and they're round, and I guess they're kind of apple-shaped. But this vine is doing well, completely untouched by the deer, which is awesome. So that's growing up here as well. Now, depending upon how these 2 grow, that also may impact whatever I plant on this side. Because obviously if they grow all the way up to the top and they create a bit of shade, that's not going to do the plants on this side any good. We'll have to wait and see how things develop. I'm playing these things by ear, by feel, I'm winging it like I do everything else. Like I do the YouTube, I'm just winging it. See what grows, see what happens. There's nothing on the other side of the bed, and I think I'm going to keep it that way, and then maybe in the fall, then I'll plant a crop of carrots. I had planted carrots through the spring. I harvested them. I got mixed results, and they didn't taste that sweet. But by the time I was harvesting them, they were warmer. My understanding is the colder it gets, the sweeter the carrot. If you think I'm wrong on any of this, again, leave those comments below. Let's move on to the last 2 beds. My neighbors across the street are now dueling. One's got the weed whacker and the other one's got the lawnmower. So again, any background noise, I do apologize. You can't stop people from trying to take care of their gardens. Here I have my last 2 beds. So in this bed, this was my bed my seed bed where I started plants off. Well, it's getting quite hot now and I'm afraid to take these plants and move them or transplant them into the ground elsewhere in the garden. I may get brave soon and transplant these because we've been having, again, a lot of rain, which means cloudy days, which means the sun isn't evaporating the ground moisture as much. I have a larkspur, which I'm 50-50 on moving. I may again leave it until the fall and then take it and put it into a pot and put it in the greenhouse until the next spring. I don't know. English daisies, they look a little rough, but they're still surviving, so, which is again good. And again, I may dig them up and put them in pots or something, and I'm not sure what I'm doing with these plants yet. So that's what's happening in the vegetable garden here in the middle of the summer. I don't think there's anything too dramatic or exciting. There are some disappointments. You know, some things I think are out of your control. I probably missed some things. I might have. The heat's been a lot. So if you have any questions or comments, please leave them below. Now that I'm thinking about it, I feel like I missed something. But, sorry, it's the heat. And I'm being distracted by the neighbors doing their yard work, which is fine. If you haven't subscribed, please subscribe. Click that bell icon to be notified when I do post a new video. I plan right now on doing a fall vegetable garden tour. And we'll find out what I'm harvesting then maybe, or how I'm preparing the garden for winter, or what I plan on trying to grow through the fall into the winter. That'll be fun. And then this upcoming Friday, I plan on doing a flower garden tour. So I'll show you what's gone over, what is flowering now, what's growing, and maybe some of my mistakes or other things like that going on with the flower garden. And I'll be when I say flower garden, I will be talking mainly about my main flower garden, but also like the beds in front of the house where I have flowers. I'll touch on them briefly because there's things that are happening there and changes that are happening. That'll be fun and exciting. And probably in the next few weeks, again, I'll be doing a dahlia tour. I'm not sure when, maybe next Monday, maybe next Friday, not 100% sure. So again, if you haven't subscribed, please subscribe with that bell icon. Also, please don't forget to check out the links below. I have all my social media stuff there and whatnot. Hi, yeah, and Sophie says it's a little too hot out and she wants to go back into the air conditioning. So we're going to catch you in the next one. Bye-bye.